Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. My co-host, Hall, will be here very, very soon. He's got a little bit extra stuff to do for the girls on the way home, so obviously he is excused for the moment. The title of tonight's episode is The Philly Do-Over, and the Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. But we are joined by a very good friend of this show, Mr. Mike Callow, the Marine Corps marathoner himself. How are you doing on this Wednesday evening, sir?
Kyle, I'm great, man. Always appreciate the invite. How you doing?
Dude, I'm doing well. Doing well. Washington is 9-5. Obviously, the best record that Washington has had in Week 14, going back to 1992. Obviously, the Commanders were made sure to remind us of that fact, and I'm glad they did so. But with Christmas coming up in a week, Callow, what's some wish list items that you have for next week on Christmas? If it pertains to Washington, like what you would want to see out of Washington, or just personal, it doesn't matter.
Let's pertain it to Washington here. I think as this week has progressed, it's been a little bit weird, right? Like this Eagles game doesn't really matter. Like I think as we've all kind of settled on, like we don't want them to get embarrassed by any means. Let's be real here. So let's say going into Christmas next week, let's go injury free in
Mm,
between the Eagles and the Falcons game. Let's roll with that because I think how I've kind of landed on here is I think there are some projections that have basically said they could lose the Eagles and the Cowboys game, but if they lose that Falcons game, they're like finished. So let's go injury free. Easy for me to say. Going into that Eagles game and coming out of the Eagles game, let's roll with that. That's what I want on my Christmas list heading into next week.
yeah, I'm excited about that Falcons game. My wife, for our anniversary, got me tickets to that game, so I'm taking her with me, obviously. So really excited to be able to get back home, be able to see the team in person. And it's funny because I heard somebody actually talk about how if you like the chances of you beating a team 3 times in a row is drastically lower than anything else. And so if Washington were to lose this weekend, a very good chance that they did match up in the playoffs, there'd be a much different circumstance. But obviously it comes down to it. But that being said, what is for Washington? What is there to learn from the last time that they played Philly? You know, cause and effect. What did we see last time, and what something that needs to change? You could say from the last time they played.
Let's go with the trend here, right? The second halves of these games have been kind of
Yep.
ugly for the defense, and it really I wouldn't say it started with that Eagles game, but they got in the thick of it with that Eagles game,
Yeah.
and the circumstances are different now. Like there isn't really an excuse off this one. They had a very physical game against the Steelers. Now the Eagles are coming off of a Steelers game. They dominated that one, and good for them. I'm not going to take any credit away, but that scenario was very different for Washington and Philly, where Philly, they got to bench all of their starters because they were playing the Cowboys. And then we turn around on a short week and it literally reared its head in the fourth quarter where they
Yep.
pulled away from the Commanders. So I want a closer game in this one. I want a better effort in the second half. This is a totally different circumstance, but you already touched on it a little bit. If Philly beats them, it's very hard to beat a team 3 times, especially with this regime. I kind of put my faith in them that if they play each other in the playoffs, it would be close, right? But I kind of go back to that, and like I said, it's going to be a very different scenario, but go back to that year where the Patriots were undefeated. Remember they played the Giants in week 17
Yeah.
and the Giants pulled out all the stops. They almost beat them to finish out that regular season. And what happened? They played each other in the Super Bowl, and Eli Manning has one of the best, Super Bowl wins ever against Tom Brady and the Patriots. And I kind of feel that way with this game with the Eagles. The stakes are low. It doesn't matter really when it comes down to it, but shoot them a message, like be physical, send them away limping a little bit and going, damn, like they played us really hard. So I'm looking for a better effort, a better second half, and really finishing strong against that Eagles team for this second matchup.
Well, with that being said, what would you say is the recipe or the navigation route in order to beat Philly this weekend? We all are well aware of AJ Brown getting kind of nicked up at the end of that game. Saquon Barkley, I think, might be dealing with something he got at the end of that game as well. But that being said, they're still obviously a well-rounded, well-built team. but how does Washington be able to not allow the Eagles to clinch the NFC East this weekend?
I think it starts and ends with Saquon. So if he is banged up, that's a win for them. I actually liked Mikey Sanders still against AJ Brown in that Thursday night matchup.
He was great
Brown
in that
only,
one.
yeah, like Brown, like that was I think his real arrival, right?
Right.
Like he finally was put on a number one wide receiver. Brown is a top five wide receiver, and he was pretty good against him. I think Brown only had 65 yards, if I remember correctly, in that game. And so now you have Lattimore as well. So you're not going to fool anybody by moving these guys around. So I think it was Dan Quinn in his press conference today. He had a quote that I loved. It was, "We need to make sure we tackle Saquon on carry 5, the same as
Yep.
35, I think is what he said too.
Yeah.
Not that I think Saquon's getting 35 carries, but I understood what coach meant by that. And so I think it starts and ends with Saquon, especially once again how the second half went last week against the Saints, right? Like Kamara gets knocked out of the game, Miller steps in, and all of a sudden Miller started gashing him for 5, 6, 7 yards here and there. I think it really goes with Saquon. I think the passing game is actually going to be okay for Washington in this one.
Yeah, I think coach is referring to the run fits being the same and the tackling being the same as it was in the beginning of the game, and obviously the offense wasn't doing them any favors. With that being said, but Washington is without they are having a lot of injury issues themselves right now. I'm not gonna say a lot, but the injury concerns just meaning with very important people: Jeremy Chin, Zach Ertz. If you had to weigh one or the other, which one do you think truly weighs more for Washington heading into this game?
I'd have to go Chin just because of the way that the defense really is kind of, house of cards, right? Like I mean, they are pretty good with starters, but the second we get into those depth pieces, it's a little dicey, and that's no one's fault right now. That's with this team, right? Like Adam Peters could only
Right.
sign so many dudes to turn over this roster. So I go with Chin. When it comes to Ertz has been very solid. But I think this opens up a road for Ben Sinnott. Like I think that's one of the missing pieces on this offense this season of guys I wanted to see. Not that it was like a concern with Sinnott, but we heard about how he's kind of this H-back role. They viewed him as like a hybrid, fullback tight end. Maybe this gives him a couple more opportunities. I know he caught a ball over the weekend, but that's a guy that I want to see what we've got moving forward here. And maybe it opens up a little bit for him with Ertz being out. So I kind of take the positive of Ertz being out, mainly though, because of Jaden. When he suits up, it doesn't really matter who the personnel is, right? Like that's been one of the best parts about Jaden this whole season. So my concern isn't on the offense overall. Chin, I think, is the more important piece here. So if I, had to weigh one more than the other, it would be Chin. Not to say that I think the offense is going to miss Ertz at least a little bit down the stretch.
Yes, and of course, one player that we talked that Washington surprisingly opened up the practice window for being John Allen. And obviously, he might not play this weekend. Most likely going to probably go against maybe the Falcons or Cowboys. We don't know how that's going to shape out. But his addition, how big of an impact is it going to be able to bring in the big guy again?
So huge. I think it was John Keim. He's been all over this. I think he was the first one to report it last week. And then he said today, chance to play in the final 2 games. So I'm with you. I think it's going to be the Falcons and the Cowboys game, which once again, I think actually does reiterate this Eagles game doesn't mean much in the long run because of just the way the division's shaking out. But so huge for Allen because I kind of came to this last week when this report came out was that Allen doesn't need to play every snap, right? As long as he can get, a third, maybe half those reps, you get him on the field at the same time as Newton and Payne. I'll take that 10 times out of 10. And, don't discount the leadership with Allen, too. That guy's chomping at the bit to play some meaningful games in December. I went back and looked at it on my show earlier today. The only playoff run he's had was that 2020 run with Ron Rivera. And that's crazy to me. I mean, you talk about a guy that's been here for 8 seasons, and that's the only playoff run he's got. He's got to be chomping at the bit. So I'll take that guy, in the trenches any day of the week. I could have sworn he was with Cousins in that run in 2016, but no, he was drafted the following year. And so, yeah, I'll take him. It's a huge lift to this defense. And I know there are some fans saying, oh, they might be better without him. You and I both know that guy, this team is better when that guy is on the field, even if it's at a limited capacity. So a huge boost to the defense that needs some help, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever John Allen's on the field, they want to dedicate 2 guys on him in the run game, not most likely not in the pass game, but those eyes being taken away helps everybody else. And somebody like Johnny Newton, who was Washington's best rated player overall in the game last weekend against the Saints, he would benefit from it himself. And so obviously Sheldon Day has come up and done a good job. But I can just think back to John Allen's in the locker room last year being pissed off, saying, I'm tired of losing, I'm tired of this. I can just only imagine how hard he was working to get back into playing meaningful games, especially now in December, but also possibly the implications down the road with playoffs. Obviously, he'd be chomping at the bit for it. He's been waiting so long for it, and it's finally here. Let's actually be able to kick the tires and get it going. I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the better players that we're needing down the road. Now, to wrap this up, Callow, only a couple more questions for you, brother, but let's say the kicker issues. Obviously, they didn't have any kickers today at practice. And Austin Zeitler, how long is he going to be out for? Because he was on IR the week before the bye week. So
it would be
2 more weeks?
Two more. Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah, two more.
What's your confidence level at this point?
Um, this is the definition of nip and tuck, right? With this kicking game right now. I mean, this is what, kicker 4? If we want to go back to training camp, kicker 5 and 6, honestly. Yeah. Look, I've landed on this. Long snapping doesn't seem to be an issue. Tressway can handle the snaps. Hope and pray at this point. That's where I've landed. I saw both kickers also weren't at the facility today because both of them have kids on the way. So that's a crazy coincidence that happened today as well. To me, it doesn't really matter who's out there. Like, I hate to say it that way, but no one that they brought in has been elite from this point on. Seibert's been the best one, but even then, he started going through what he went through. So I wish I had a better take on it, but that's where I've landed now. Hope and pray that they just make the ones that are makeable at this point.
Complete brain fart. I call him Seibert. Zeitler is what I call him. But I'm pretty sure that he also had a kid this year. And so that explains the sleep deprivation it looked like when he was in that Cowboys game. But it's crazy. The kickers obviously have a lot of time on their hands, you could say. Now, my next question for you, Callow. Let's say with the Pro Bowl votes, who realistically, it's hard for me because there's so many guys on this roster deserve to be in the Pro Bowl just based on what they've done this year. Obviously, Jaden Daniels and others, but who is somebody you think really truly deserves to get in?
So I think your slam dunks are Jaden and Terry. I think Terry, you and I both know that Terry is this whole fan base knows that Terry is elite, and maybe the numbers don't say it, but
it's crazy that I have to argue about this with people for so many years.
And I kind of look at Terry as, if I have to tell you, I don't really want to argue with you because you don't know ball. That's always my thing with Terry. But I think Terry makes it. I think Jaden, of course, is going to make it. And then I would like to see a guy like Luvu make it, like someone on this defense that has helped turn things around. Maybe Wagner makes it off of name recognition alone. Those are two names on the defense that I would love. I think Mikey Sanders still could make a case too, but I just think there are too many good cornerbacks in the league. As far as that, I think that's about it because, look, you look at the offense, it's really been a by committee approach with all the wide receivers not named Terry, so I don't really see any of them going. Don't see any of the tight ends going. You can make an argument with maybe a Sam Cosme or a Biotish or one of the linemen, but you and I both know how this works. It's on name recognition, and there aren't many kind of big names, so to speak, on this offensive line. So slam dunks, I'll go with, Jaden and Terry, and then I hope one of those linebackers gets in as well, and I'll kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, Dante Fowler, I think, has been doing a heck of a job. I uploaded a film breakdown the other day, and his spin move that he had on the first sack on Haener was absolutely beautiful. He's playing at a high level, and hat tip to Dan Quinn and Ryan Kerrigan and Daryl Tapp for getting those guys up and running, because I poo-pooed that position early on to saying, what are we going to get? And they've obviously been producing at a high level. Last question I have for you. Unsung hero, do you think, in this game?
Ooh, in this Eagles game, unsung hero. Put me on the spot here. Let me go. I'll go with I'm going to go with a weird answer here, but I'm going to go with the wide receivers not named Terry McLaurin. If they win this game, I think they get some clutch catches, and they did it last week against the Saints, right? Zacchaeus gets 3 catches. You had welcome back Jamison Crowder.
Yep.
Got some catches as well.
Crucial ones on third down. He was great at that.
Yep. Exactly. You had 1 catch by McCaffrey. Didn't go anywhere. But let's go with the wide receiver 2 by committee. Could be the unsung hero of this game. And I think it's funny. All those guys I just named, are unsung heroes. Let's be real here when it comes down to it. So let me go with the wide receivers not named Terry McLaurin in this one. I'll specifically go Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus he's made some clutch grabs. He only gets one or two or three a game, but it seems like he's always Johnny on the spot, as any other football coach would say. So let me go wide receivers, and I'll go specifically Zacchaeus in
Well, let
this
me
one.
let me turn up the volume a little bit on this one. What would you say for the season?
Ooh, on the season, man. It's unfortunate. I'd have to go Noah Brown. I know he's hurt.
Okay, that's
But
probably a
I
really
I
good
go
one.
Noah. I go Noah Brown here. I mean, take out the Hail Mary. Like I'm not trying to even just put that moment, but that guy in the first game he played when they played the Giants at home, he made a couple catches in the second half, and then
Yeah.
it just seemed like if he wasn't going in the first half, Jaden would find him on the second to last or last drive when they were putting teams away in the first half of games. I know he had a tough go of it when he had a drop in the Steelers game, but talk about a guy that Adam Peters signs literally the last week of preseason or going into the first week of the season that was just like really, really just solid for this team when they needed some help at wide receiver. So I'll go Noah Brown. I'll go with him as unsung hero on the season.
Oh, I forgot to ask you just real quick if you have
Oh
a
yeah,
couple minutes.
yeah, of
RFK
course.
and that, and
Oh
obviously
yeah,
everyone's going on Elon Musk right now because he's saying your tax dollars shouldn't pay for a stadium. Which look, we all have done it before. We've all commented on something without actually reading it, of course. But
sure.
what are some tidbits? What is some good info you've heard about it?
So this one, of course, we all know there's a ton of red tape for RFK, right? And
Right.
shout out to Eric Flack, who's been all over this. I think he's been the best person when it comes down to this. And he tweeted this out earlier today, which I thought was interesting. We are already at the point where they are discussing with the Commanders what kind of stadium they want. So
Wow.
that we have already had it thrown out there that a retractable roof, I think, is like 600 million bucks. But if they want that translucent roof that like SoFi and Allegiant have, that's like half the price essentially from 2 to 400 million essentially. Um, I've always kind of landed on I like the elements, but let's be honest here about DC lately. We don't get snow anymore. We just get rain and crappy weather. So I'm okay with a covered stadium. Plus, that probably guarantees we get a Super Bowl here at least one time with the new stadium. So I think it's just a really good sign that we are already having discussions of what kind of stadium they want down at RFK, and the bill, the paper's still warm from the copy machine essentially. So I really truly think that's a great sign that RFK is not only, here, it's going to happen, and hopefully, it gets pushed through fast. And I think that's just something that we all want to see down the stretch. But the fact that we are already having that discussion, baby, that means that RFK is real close, I think.
Not even just a Super Bowl, but it also gives more of an incentive for like the public the concerts, different things that you can have
Yep.
there, more revenue to bring in. So obviously that's probably the best bet for everybody involved. Like of course you love the elements to be involved in the games and everything, but just fiscally talking here, obviously that's always the better option for everybody involved. Callow, I can't thank you enough for taking some time out for me as always, brother. Before you get out of here, would you like to plug your social media handle?
Sure, man. You can follow me at Mike_Callow. That's the same on Twitter and on Instagram. You can listen to my show, The Line Change, every day, 3 to 5 on ESPN 630. I'm heavily involved with Bram Weinstein, too. Of course, voice of the Commanders, who's gotten a lot of run this season with some of his calls. His show's on at 11. I join him most days on his show as well. So check us out at ESPN 630.
Yes, and of course, with that jacket on, I know you got to run. All right, Callow, go and enjoy your evening, sir. Have a Merry Christmas, and enjoy these last couple games, brother.
Happy holidays. Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it.
All right, man. All right, everybody, we just spoke with the man, Mr. Mike Callow. Always appreciate his time. That was explosive, hearing about the RFK news. That he's under the impression that RFK is here. It's at RFK. So everyone, I would say pop the champagne bottles. Get ready for this. It's gonna be a lot of fun, and I'm excited for the team to be back where they belong. We all know about the stench that comes from Landover, and look, man, it's been bad times there. Look, I got a picture of Landover over here somewhere, FedEx Field. I don't know why, but I just have it because that's where the Redskins were playing at, and I loved it, obviously. But being back at RFK is a completely different animal. And that's something that we all, I think, can get behind and really support. And so, regardless of what Elon thinks, whatever we got to do to get it back there, let's do it. Okay? It takes two to tango, so to speak. I'm just glad that they were able to get it done so we can actually be back to where we belong. Now, before I'm joined by my co host and another guest here, Want to ask some questions that were brought in from the Discord. This one is from Meast. Question for the pod: who is your most disliked player in history? Mine is Reed Doughty because I felt he was trying to take Sean Taylor's place. He portrayed himself that he was better. Although I disagree about Reed Doughty. My mom was a huge supporter of Reed Doughty. I believe that he was deaf, and my mom's sign language interpreter. Both of her parents, my grandparents, were deaf. They met down in Florida at the Florida School for the Deaf. So that's something that I was always like rooting for. Personally, was Reed Doughty because of that. And look, he was put in a crappy position. Sean Taylor himself said Reed Doughty could do things nobody else could do. And that's, look, Sean Taylor told him that, and I'm not going to argue with him. That's Sean Taylor saying that. But who is the most disliked player in history, I would say? Ooh, that's a really good one because it's hard to say. In history, I'd probably say Tony Romo is up there. I just really, him and Wade Phillips, man, I just could not stand those two. Could not stand them whatsoever. But I can't really say I disliked any player really. Like no player really like got on my nerves. I don't think I can't put my finger on it, man. I can't tell you really, but if I'm gonna settle on one, it's gonna be Tony Romo, just because like I'll always upload that video, that picture of him sitting there at the failed field 2-point or the botch snap where he's sitting on the field like so disappointed. Like I loved seeing that part of Tony Romo. I loved seeing that. So if I'm gonna say anybody, it's Tony Romo. Not like on a personal level, it's just some Redskins kind of feeling, and you know what I mean behind it. That's just how I feel. Not a big disliked person, I will say. Now, next question is from Tim Towner. In Week 11, Philly was able to make Terry disappear like he was in the Bermuda Triangle. And now we are down Noah Brown, Austin Eckler, and Zach Ertz. If we are to win, someone else is going to have a career game. Who will that be? I will go on a limb and I'll say it's Brian Robinson. And look, I know what they have up front. They're very stout up front. Defensively, the Eagles are ranked 4th in red zone. They're tied for 1st in points per game. They're 1st in passing yards. They are 7th in rushing yards, 2nd on third down conversion percentage, and 9th in sacks. But if you're really going to go in and win this game against Philly at home, where Washington is 5-2 at home and Philly is 6-1 away. Obviously, they've only lost 2 games in the year. So, but my point here is you have to keep their offense off the field. Last time, our defense was very much so on the field a lot. And we kind of talked about it with Callow, where at the end of that game, our defense was worn out. And Saquon was kind of able to take advantage of things. And obviously, you want to be able to go in and say you're going to play hard for all 4 quarters. But there's a lot a lot of energy on every given player, using every muscle in your body, and it's hard to continue having that production throughout, especially if you're on the field a lot. And last time, the offense was not helping our guys out because although they were doing a great job for 3 quarters in that game, they were out there a lot, and our offense was not doing all that much in being able to have long, sustaining drives, allowing for the defense to just get fresh, you know what I mean, and to rest up a little bit. So if anyone's going to have a career game, it's Brian Robinson, in my opinion. You have to be able to control the clock in this game. Keep their offense off the field. Allow our defense, more importantly, to have that rest time, to be able to come up and concoct some plays, to be able to find out what they're doing, be able to adjust, and then be able to go out and attack and be able to limit as much as possible. Each team is going to come into this with new things, and you have to be able to adjust on the fly, and Joe Witt typically does a very good job at that. We can talk about the second half and what transpires there, but ultimately it's very important for Washington to control the clock in this game, keep them off the field, and we saw it last week where Brian Robinson had 21 rushing yards for like 65 yards, only averaged 3 yards per carry. And you saw in that second half how it kind of gave the Saints the ability to have the short fields. And that's what you want to eliminate. Control the time of possession, be able to run the ball sustainably, have them by the throat the entire game. And the way you do that is on the ground. And then be able to use play action, use the passing game off of that, use Jaden's legs off of that to be able to really put the hammer down and to be able to dig that ditch further for them. And so if there's any way that Washington is going to win this football game, it's ground and pound. It's controlling the clock and allowing Brian Robinson to use that to use his legs, his huge body, to be able to create those short down and distances. Last thing that we want to do is get into a position where we're having to have Jaden step back 3 times every play because we're trying to get back into the game where there's a long separation. Let's control the clock. Let's score points and allow Brian Robinson to have a career game. And the caveat here is I do have him playing in my fantasy playoffs this weekend. I am going against my brother, my little brother, so I kind of need some help there. B Rob, my brother. So I'll say anything, Tim. I'll say it's Brian Robinson. He has to have a career game, control the time of possession, execute with points, and you're going to be putting yourself in a very good position right now. The Phillies offense, they're 28th in passing yards. They're first in rushing yards. So if you're able to get up early on them, Tim, and to be able to force them into those passing situations, you might be able to do some justice. You might be able to do well there because Washington defensively, they're fourth in passing yards and 25th in rushing yards. So you want to force them in those passing situations with the newly acquired and healthy Marshawn Lattimore. We know that Mikey Sanders still could come up with turnovers if it's thrown to him. And so that's the guy that I'm keying in on, I'm looking at to be able to say, let's make a play. Let's get some turnovers here, and let's utilize the field position, the time of possession, to be able to bleed this thing out and to win this football game because it's going to be difficult going against Philly at home. And they typically play well against us there, but I have trust in our boys that they'll be able to get the job done with Tyler Badass being acquired here. Now, Deluxe, are you there, brother? I'm not sure. I can't hear you right now. But there you are. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
So I just answered Tim Towner's question. I want to get your opinion on the matter, brother. You
All
being
right.
a longtime listener, great friend. Obviously, you took Hull and I. You were nice enough to pick us up, take us to week 1, and so it's a pleasure to have you on here finally. But his question was, obviously last time Terry was kind of held in check, and being without Noah, Austin, and Ertz, if we were to win, who would have to have a career game for us to win?
I think that's a really interesting question. And I think they're going to move Terry around a little bit more than they did the first game because of the way the Eagles were playing him. The I'm I'm I don't really know if they're going to go with like 12 personnel, 11 personnel. Zach Ertz being out is interesting, and Noah. So I think you're going to see more 11 personnel, and I think the surprise contributor might be Jamison Crowder.
Hmm.
Jamison Crowder and then Brian Robinson on screens. We saw a little bit of that return last week. So where most people might be thinking Luke or Diami, I think Diami will be there in his role that he's had. But I think Jameson Crowder and B Rob could surprise.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Jameson last week, I think, had 3 receptions for 30 yards on 4 targets. He was obviously utilized on third down, and he was making some crucial catches. Even the one that was more towards the earth, he was still able to get his hands underneath of it to the point where you couldn't justifiably say it was an incomplete pass. Just going to show you how important Jamison Crowder is when he is on the field. That's a great one. And not only that, but the special teams ability on top of it. I mean, this could be a game where special teams could be one of those solid contributors and getting you points. They're getting you over the top against the Eagles. Now, of course I didn't answer your question before you got on here, Arch. So I'm gonna ask it to you, and then I'm gonna answer it. But Arch's question is, Philly is going to pay a lot of attention to Terry and B-Rob. What personnel and offense do you think that we see? 11, 12, 13, 21, etc. Basically, who will Cliff look to more? The other wide receivers, running backs, or tight ends in this matchup? Terry moved around, or B-Rob used on screens like you already talked about?
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting piece of this is how are they going to attack Philly? And I think they're going to do what they've done all year, and it's by committee. Of course, Terry will get his targets, and they'll try to get him more involved early, as they've been doing. I do think they're going to move him around, especially against the Eagles. But I think it's going to be a little bit of everybody, and maybe leaning on a vet like Crowder and B Rob out of the backfield without Eckler. Um, but I do think my personal opinion is I think they're going to go with more 11 personnel with Ertz being out because who's going to be that other tight end that steps up this week? Is that going to be Cole Turner that gets elevated?
Mm.
Do they bring back Colson Yankoff from short-term IR? They did activate John Allen, or they uh, opened John Allen's return window, but they did not open Yankoff's. So I think you can kind of rule Yankoff out. So is it going to be Cole Turner? Is it going to be the new guy taking the that third spot if Ertz can't go? So I do think it's going to be more 11 personnel.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think the 11 personnel makes sense. And the big cog in all this is that up front, that four-man rush that they were able to utilize heavily and to be able to kind of suffocate you in that sort of sense. And I think that Washington's kind of MO in this game is going to be winning in the trenches, is going to be dominating on the ground as much as you possibly can. We saw against the Saints where they would try to run out of shotgun with B Rob. Those got nulled pretty quickly and taken away. And so that kind of like gives you a look, a preview into what's possibly going to come ahead this weekend. So you got to get smart with it. And do they go back to the ground and pound where they just go back to power football? Or are they going to try to work the edges, the perimeter of the field, like you said, with the screens and everything like that? That's why I think your pick of Jamison Crowder being the guy they lean on is going to be huge. Because the one thing with Quinyon Mitchell, with Darius Slay out there, you almost want them to be taken out of the equation and then to attack underneath on the perimeter. And that's where like Jamison Crowder comes in with slants or crossing routes to be able to open that up for you. You love to be able to see John Bates out in space. Obviously, we've seen him catch some footballs along the sidelines, get upfield and run some people over. You love to be able to see that. And so I think the matchup with like Reed Blankenship is going to be huge in how they kind of utilize these guys. And I do wonder, honestly, with Jeremy McNichols, if he's going to be utilized a little bit more in the passing game, and obviously B-Rob himself. But it's a great question to ask because with Cole Turner, because him being a passing kind of guy, the former guest on this show, are they going to utilize somebody like Cole Turner? Or are they going to go with Tyree Jackson? Are they going to go with a better run blocker, or are they going to try to use somebody that's a better pass catcher and be able to utilize the middle of the field? Because that's one thing that you do have to take into consideration here. Because Philly being number one against the pass, it's going to be hard to throw on them, but you got to find ways to get that done. And obviously, we all know that these divisional games are very hard to map out and to kind of predict because everything is all over the field. You truly don't
Yeah.
know. And that's why I feel like getting back to that ground and pound is one way to really utilize that. And getting Badass back a week of rest, that maybe we could find something there, an identity, so to speak, offensively, especially in the trenches, to be able to get upfield and to feel confident about that power game. And I do wonder if Jaden Daniels is going to go off with his legs. This would be one heck of a week for that to happen.
Oh, well, wonderful week for it to happen. The two tight end, three tight end sets are definitely interesting because I know they were using a lot of those last week.
Yeah.
Losing Ertz is a bad time to lose Ertz, especially going against Philly. I mean, you know this is a game that he had circled on the calendar, and for him to, it looks like he's going to be missing this one. It's just a shame.
Absolutely just a shame. Now, let's get some questions from the Colonel who sent these in. They're great ones. Aside from obvious choices like Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels, who else do you see from the Commanders being selected for the Pro Bowl this year? I will say this. Jaden Daniels did that charity event the other night, which was obviously awesome for those young people in the area. Love to see that. We just need our guy to invest in some good boots. You know, I love seeing him in the Timbs. I know that the fashion sense is that you leave the laces out. I get it. But get the young man some Tim Pros, some good looking boots, some steel toes, and have him walk around with some fire in his chest, so to speak. We need to help him out with some boots here, Arch. But who do you see as some?
The Twitter doctors were analyzing that video big time. Every step was definitely looked at very closely. It's always funny.
It is. Well, he's also wearing sweatpants, and so you got to wonder like how much is he really trying to make sure his pants don't fall down? Because your cell phones weigh a lot nowadays, especially if you got your wallet in your pocket, and they can bring them down. But who else do you see besides Terry and Jaden making the Pro Bowl this year, Arch?
We'd love to see B-Rob. I think there's a lot of competition there, and he's missed a lot of games. But what he's done in the plays that he has been out there has been very effective. Um, Pro Bowl, I mean, Luvu, I think is definitely deserving of it. Um, Wagner is probably going to get there just based on name recognition. That's what a lot of the Pro Bowl is nowadays. But Terry and Jaden are slam dunks. I would love to see B-Rob. Luvu, of course. Mikey, as a rookie, has played really well. I just don't think he has the name recognition to get it yet.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm missing anybody.
Well, I would argue.
The line.
All right.
I mean, Cosme and Biotish are both worthy of Pro Bowl. Just don't know if they're gonna quite get there with the voting.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think those two definitely. Obviously, Biotish is somebody that is deserving of it, just the way that he is, the way he's battled through injuries. I would like, not the sentimental aspect, but just being honest here, the injuries that he has had, fought through, being able to what he's done with this offensive line, kind of helping them out because everyone coming into this year were saying that this offensive line is horrible. It's one of the worst in the NFL. And it's like almost flip-flopped from what like Chicago Bears fans were saying coming into this, or people were saying about Chicago, that this was the best possible environment for a rookie quarterback to really flourish in. Well, now all of a sudden it's the O-line's fault. He's running for his life. Like, I've heard that argument before. I don't believe it whatsoever. I don't think the offensive line is that bad, and I didn't think this one was either. It's all about how you use them. And with what they've been given, with the offense they've been given, I think the offensive line, Sam Cosmi, Biotish, definitely deserve it. Allegretti get a hat tip, of course. But the one guy I think that you did not bring up that probably does deserve to get in there is Dante Fowler. And what he has done. Somebody that I poo-pooed early on. I will take ownership of that. But man, was Dan Quinn right about him and what he has done as a pass rusher, his spin moves, the way that he has been such a force in a lot of these games, almost having double-digit sacks. Frankie Luvu, of course, he is an energy, he's a lightning rod to this defense. He really is the heart of it. And to really look at like who Frankie Luvu is to this defense, you go back to that Philly game where he comes out against Philly and is playing with his hair on fire. And by the end of that game, I think like you can kind of see the heart of the defense with Frankie Luvu. And so Frankie Luvu, without a doubt, deserves it, in my personal opinion. Obviously, Dante does. He's got the return touchdown. He's got the interception. He's had some I think he had a forced fumble. And then, obviously, almost double-digit sacks, of course. Jeremy Chin, I think, is somebody that's also deserving with what he has done. Obviously, it's going to be hard as a safety, but I think but Jeremy Reeves. We got to bring up Jeremy Reeves.
Yeah.
The tone setter on special teams, I think, does deserve it. And just from a fan speaking, the energy that he brings, like I was there for a couple of the games where he is running to the stands, hyping everyone up. What Dan Quinn wanted and what Joe Witt wanted, where you're arriving violently, like Jeremy Reeves really does push that identity with the special teams. And Dan Quinn has brought that up many, many times where the special teams has really done a good job of emulating that, of bringing that identity to the team by starting out games by coming up flying and hitting people. And you see Jeremy Reeves on every kickoff, just going down there blazing fast and trying to make a big play happen for the whole team. And so I think Jeremy Reeves is somebody that definitely deserves it. Can't forget about Tress Way either. The best holder in the league by far. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, can he get in for holding alone? I mean, what he's done holding this year has been impressive. I can't believe I missed Fowler. And then and I'm going to admit this, I can't believe I thought this in the offseason, but he was my surprise cut in the offseason down to 53. Glad that didn't happen. And then Jeremy Reeves. You know what's hurting Jeremy Reeves right now? Owens and Ballore.
Yeah.
They're playing so well, it's a three-headed monster on special teams. So, I mean, Reeves is doing what Reeves does, and, it's all pro Revo. But he's got some help there now with Tyler Owens and Nick Ballore.
And it definitely doesn't help Tress Way that he's had one of the most productive and best third down offenses in the NFL. Right now, Washington's offense is 6th on third down percentage. So compared to last year, he hasn't been punting as much, which is a great news for the team, but not great news for Tress Way. And I'm sure that he'll take that all day long. But just saying, would love to see my boy in there. Now, the next question from the Colonel. Deluxe, what impact would the return of players on IR like John Allen and Austin Eckler have for us in a playoff run?
I'm actually getting excited about this because, everybody complained about the late bye, rightfully so, 3 years in a row. It's crazy. But when you're making a playoff push, it's a blessing now. And then on top of that, It's unfortunate that we lost an Ertz, that we lost an Eckler, that we've lost a Noah Brown, that we lost a John Allen. But all of these guys could be coming back for that playoff push. I mean, Allen is practicing this week. Eckler, I think, what is this, the third or fourth game he's missed? So Eckler's been seen at the facility and around the team. So hopefully Eckler is on the way back. Noah Brown, I mean, they're finding ways of winning without some of these key pieces that have been there for the season, whether they're role players or just steady veterans. So if we can get some of these guys back and really make a push, I think it could be huge. But they're finding ways of winning with next man up mentality right now. And we just need to keep doing that and get these guys back and make a push.
You're absolutely right. And Jonathan Allen's impact alone, because not a lot of people give credit, because obviously the run game is not something that, as a normal, nonchalant, casual fan, are going to see is like the run fits, how you're able to stifle offensive linemen, stand them up, and to force the running back to make that cut. Just that extra hesitation to allow like somebody like Frankie Louvu or Bobby Wagner to be able to come through the gap, be able to wrap him up and nullify. Jonathan Allen is exceptional against the run. And when you're talking about the playoffs, where Hall brought this up on Sunday, where in the playoffs, obviously running the football is monumental. Can you run the football and can you stop the run? Obviously, Washington right now is not great against the run, but it's not one of the reasons I believe that they've been putting themselves in bad situations. I think that's much more so just schematically, game plan, what they're trying to do. So with John Allen, especially in this playoff run, coming in there to nullify and to be able to win in the trenches is going to be huge. Not only because of what he does on a down in and down and out basis, but the fact of the rotation of the big men. You're adding another body in there, a former Pro Bowler, somebody who is very, very good against the run. You're adding more freshness to the defensive line going into a very important stretch of games. And that's somebody that's seen a lot of football that also is not going to be taking this with like a grain of salt. Like he's probably got a fire under his butt right now because he wants to be able to make this happen. And so that's somebody you're getting in there that is hungry, that's thirsty, and that play to playoff food is sitting right in front of them. And so that's somebody you're going to come in highly motivated. And you can't talk enough about what Austin Eckler brings. I don't want to sit here and say that Austin Eckler is going to come back because of how severe it's been for him this year with 2 concussions. We don't know exactly what he's dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Like, I don't want to say Austin needs to get back for the playoffs so his offense will really get going. But just like I talked about John Allen with that rotation, adding Austin Eckler into that running back room is going to be huge for this offense, especially being without Noah and Ertz right now. That's somebody else. That's a playmaker you got to keep your eye on. We've seen it all year long, and it's not like it's a body injury that he has to work back into. And so for me personally, that's going to be huge for this offense, just another outlet for Jaden, for somebody else to have to keep an eye on when it comes down to that playoff push, because obviously they're going to be eyeing Jaden. And so we got to find another way to run the football. And what Austin does with Brian Robinson, they work so well together in tandem, being the lightning and thunder, whereas you need that kind of spark. And sometimes Austin Eckler certainly does provide that in games. So going down the playoffs, running the football, it's going to be huge for this offense. Now,
100%.
Now the next question from the Colonel. Brandon McManus was 3 for 3 on field goals and 2 for 2 on extra points for the Packers last week. He's the kicker we signed, then cut due to fallout from a sexual scandal. We are on our 4th kicker since cutting him. Is a franchise kicker going to be a high priority this offseason? It's a great question. Great question. I would say yes. Because, look, I've said for a while, with offenses, you don't want to have to depend on kicking field goals to score points. You don't want to have to, but you want to have that confidence that your kicker can make anything, right? Because like Aubrey for Dallas and other guys, like even Justin Tucker is having some issues, right? And so, like it's hard to be able to find that dependable, stable kicker, but that's obviously something that Washington is going to try to shore up. And look, they missed it with Brandon McManus, and I can understand why they cut ties with him. You don't want to sit here and say, oh, they made the wrong decision, where you didn't know how it was going to play out, right? We are not in the know on what transpired and what happened with all that. So all I'll say is I do think it's going to be a high priority, possibly even a draft pick. We don't know. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of. We don't know if there's going to be a lot of turnover or not. There's guys like Dante Fowler and Frankie Louvu deserving of contract, or Frankie already signed a long deal, but Dante Fowler deserves a deal. Allegretti, I think, is on a 1-year deal, if I'm not mistaken. What about Badass, Tyler Biotish? And so we don't know everything that's going to happen, what they're going to need to allocate for the draft. But that's certainly a position that you would like to shore up because we saw from this season all the mixing and matching, and the grass ain't always green on the other side. So we want to be able to get somebody in here who is sustainable, that we have confidence in, that we could go in and say he's going to be able to make this kick because we know from this year it's cost us some games, but at end all be all, it can't be what you depend on to win games, so to speak. It's just you want to feel confident that they're going to make those kicks. Deluxe, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
My bad. What do you think?
No, I definitely think they're going to shore it up. The unfortunate thing with McManus is he put the team in a difficult situation where all the kickers were pretty much gone.
Right.
And they've been picking through everything this season. That won't be the case this offseason. This offseason, the kickers move around the league, and very few are that Justin Tucker type. So they can definitely get a capable kicker that you can rely on, and it'll be able to be found in free agency. Rookie kickers are always scary just because most kickers take some time to develop in the NFL. So even if they draft one, I could see or sign an undrafted free agent kicker. I think that would be more practice squad to groom them while having a vet kicker on the team that will be available early in the offseason as opposed to right around week 1.
Yeah,
where they were put into position this year, unfortunately.
No, you're absolutely right. It's been a thorn in our backside, and it seems like kicker has always been an issue, which is funny because we had Mark Mosley on this team at one point, winning, and so it's just weird that our organization is dealing with kicker issues, but typically it's not the case. And it's just funny going back in
Mosley,
history. Yeah.
Chip Lowmiller.
That's a name that my uncle always loves to bring up. You weren't around with Chip Lowmiller, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no idea what you're talking about, dude. But I'll take your word for it.
Every kick was known as a chip shot because he was just automatic for a good part of his career. Strong leg, Chip Lowmiller was good. Now, I will bring up that Northwest Stadium has been notoriously a bad place to kick for both Washington kickers and other teams' kickers. Look at the Dallas kicker. 4 of his 7 career misses are at Northwest Stadium. So I do think we have to take that into account, is that it is very tough. Look at all the kickers we've moved on from that have had good careers once they've gotten away from the stadium.
I was going to bring that up.
There is something to that. It is notoriously bad on kickers from both teams, and kicks are missed there. It's unfortunate, and it's not even because of the turf, because the turf has all been replaced 3-4 seasons ago. It's just a bad place to kick for some reason.
It is. I was going to bring up like Graham Gano, David Akers was on here at one point. I know I'm missing some other ones that have done a very, very good job once they've left Washington. It's just going to show it's a tough place to kick in. Now, Deluxe,
you can't turn on an NFL game without seeing a former Washington kicker. From Kai Forbath to Sean Sweezum to Gano to, there's so many of them that are still in the league all around the place.
And coaches as well, as Jay Gruden would like to talk about a lot. Now, Deluxe, to wrap this up, this episode, what is your prediction for the game this Sunday?
See, I don't make score predictions, but I will say this. Commanders are going to win. They're going to go 1-0 this week. And that's all that matters. We take care of each game as it comes. Commanders win.
Who's the unsung hero of the game?
Jamison Crowder. I'm sticking with that one. I think he's going to have an impact on the offense this week.
My man, I'll say, look, I have to go with Washington. I think Washington's going to win. I do think there is truth into the playing a team 3 times in a row and having to beat them all 3 times. That's very difficult in order to do. My unsung hero for this game, I'll say it's somebody like Ben Sinnott that could really utilize the middle of the field. And this would be a great game for him to kind of make himself known and to showcase himself. I know Jamison Crowder is obviously another one that's fantastic to be able to pick here. But I think Ben Sinnott is somebody that could, when Jaden is looking for that reliable target, Ben Sinnott has not been utilized in that sort of sense. It's much more of like a trickery type of thing where if you're looking to sit down in the middle of that zone in the middle of the field, I think he's going to be there. And those linebackers are very good, Zach Bond and those. And I think that Washington, if there's anything you're going to be able to really be able to capitalize on in the passing game, it's going to be attacking that middle of the field in order to open things up out wide. And of course, I would love to pick my guy, Terry McLaurin. But I do think Washington wins. It's going to be a tight one. It's going to be a close one. But I think Washington wins 24-20. It's going to be a nail biter coming down to the end. I don't know who's going to be kicking the field goals. Maybe Tress Way is able to pull another shoe out of his bag and kick some field goals for us, because I don't know. Both guys are out this week with possibly having new kids, and so congratulations to them. But we don't know what's going to go on this weekend, right?
That is just wild that both kickers are out for births of children. The kicking situation this year has just become a comic book at this point. It's crazy.
Yep, they got. I guess you could say they have a lot of expendable energy when they're not at the facility, or a lot of time on their hands, because it is kind of crazy. Didn't you say that Austin Seibert had a newborn himself?
I don't know. I didn't say that. I don't think.
I thought somebody said that in the Discord, and I was like, no, that would explain the sleep deprivation, because when I saw him in that Cowboys game, I was like, dude, there's something up, man. He looks like he hasn't been getting sleep. But that being said, that's going to...
Can I add one more for Unsung Hero? I want to add a defender.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's go ahead and add Defoe in there.
He needs it.
I think he played a decent game last week. He got 31 snaps. And depending on the health of Chin, he was practicing today, which is a good sign, because it would be great to have Chin, Martin, and Defoe back out there in those 3 safety looks. But if Defoe has to fill in, that's a prime candidate for a Unsung Hero. Yeah,
and he obviously was bringing the lumber last week, which obviously did not help again with Jeremy Chin. But when you're talking about...
Did you see how that happened?
He came back and he knocked out both of them, didn't he?
He hit the offensive player in the chest, and it was the New Orleans Saints helmet that whiplashed back and hit Chin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, look at that closely. Defoe didn't hit Chin. Defoe hit the Saint, and the helmet hit Chin.
That's how. Look, that's what I've been saying. That with Defoe is he really does truly emulate what they want to do with arriving violently. It's one thing that he has done. And in a division game, when you're trying to arrive with physicality, establishing physicality and aggressiveness, somebody like Defoe being able to come up and make a big play could really bring some energy to the defense when they truly need it. The Defoe is a great one. The other one I would bring up is Dorrance Armstrong. He has been heating up as of late, and he's been helping out. I know Joe Witt wanted to get him more sacks, and he was able to get one last week. Him being a force in this game would be huge. That offensive line is no joke, of course, against Philly. But if you're able to use the right fundamentals and to be able to use the right mechanics and stay in the play, and Jalen Hurts, I know this, he is one of the worst numbers when it comes to sack yardage because he runs backward and things like that. Something that Dorrance Armstrong could easily clean up and be able to help us out a little bit. Him being so big against Jalen Hurts would be great. So for me, yeah. I would say Dorrance Armstrong in that breath.
He has definitely heated up, especially this past game. He was really flashing in this last game. Maybe he's fully healthy. I know he dealt with injury this season, but he's definitely looked better as of late.
Yes, he has.
Which is good for the team.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. I'm Kyle.
I'm Deluxe.
There you go. Great one. And the voice of the Discord, you could say. This week being Christmas, I don't know exactly what we're going to do for the Wednesday show. We'll be back for a post-game show on Sunday after the Philly game, so make sure you tune in then to be able to get some immediate reaction to whatever we're about to witness. But I'm sure it's going to be something good, because that'd be a great early Christmas present for us all. We don't like seeing Philly fans happy. You know, I work with enough of them. I don't like to see them happy, and seeing a lot of them in this Delaware/PA region, I don't like getting all the heckles and everything. Whenever I'm wearing a W around, I always got to get asked about it. But we'll see you guys again on Sunday night. Have a great weekend, everybody. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.